right. So if there's no more questions, Tony, I pass it on back to you. And I hear you guys are going to have a good book. I haven't read it, so I may go read it after this session.
Well, if the goal, first of all, thank you, Grace, so much. The hope is that if after you've had this, you don't have to read it, or you at least get the highlights that you can. Now, you're more than welcome, obviously, to stick around, and you're also welcome to go back to your day, because we really appreciate you taking some time to talk with us. So thank you, Grace.
Thank you. I do have it back in at 10, but I'll hang around for like 10 to 9 more minutes.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. All right, so this book is the last one in our book series. So thank you all. There was like 60 something books that were recommended by this group, and we voted on the top 4. And this was the last one. Now, the premise of this book is, as you can see, how do introverts really lead? And there's just a lot of stigmas out there, or there's a lot of stereotypes out there that introverts aren't good leaders, and that's not true. And you have to be extroverted in order to be a natural leader. Again, not true. So I think this book probably resonates with a lot of us. So by show of hands, and if you decide to turn your camera back off, shame on you, but show of hands, either thank you, Helena, welcome back. I won't call anybody else out now. Now that I called you out, now everyone's scared to put their camera back on, because they'll be like, oh, he's gonna call me out. I won't call you out. Put your camera back on though, because I really want to see your hands here. How many think they're introverted, or self-describe them as introverts? Grace, Christian, almost everybody who's on camera. I'm going to put my hand up because, believe it or not, I'm an introvert. There's a difference between social anxiety of performing, which is what this is, and then the anxiety of having small talk. Guys, that destroys me. As anyone who knows me very, very well, I struggle with being authentic in small talk. And because truthfully, most of the time, hey, you're just in my way to get to the coffee machine, or you're just in my way to get back to my office. And now I have to fabricate this 5-minute conversation about stuff that, if I care about you, we've had real conversations. But if I've never had a conversation with you, it's going to be really hard for me to get like invested in how was your weekend. I've never talked to you before. I'm not going to talk to you again till a month from now. I'm not really sure I'm really interested in your weekend. But anyway, all that to say, most of us fall somewhere on the scale. So let's talk a little bit about what that is. So this book has got about, I think, 10 chapters, and you can see that these chapters are laid out with really one topic and then 3 different lessons for each one of those topics. So each page, if you're a slide counter, we have about 13 slides left, but each slide is a page or a chapter from this book. And by all means, afterwards, actually, let me give a quick shout out to Annie. Annie, this book last month or last quarter, this one had the most engagement. We had about 12 cohorts that developed from this. I'm still happy to print more pages if you want. I mean, all these sticky notes, you guys really went to town on trying to extract as much value as you could out of this book, man or woman. So great job. So with that same spirit, if there's any topic on here that as you look at it, take a screenshot. If I don't cover it enough, because truthfully, I'm not going to probably in 6 more minutes, feel free to ask me afterwards to dive in more about that. But my goal is that we're going to have a good overview from each one of these chapters and kind of understand what the book's about and how to help you. So here's the kind of first stereotype. If you're in a room and there's 10 people in the room and 5 of them are doing all the talking, they are traditionally viewed as the leaders. It's just the way it is. Now, it doesn't mean they are. It could mean that the leaders are actually the ones listening and absorbing and developing a plan. But the way society and the way we generally see it as is that the leaders are the talkers. So you have a job as an introvert is 1, change that paradigm, change that dynamic, and show how you bring value in an authentic way. Don't become a chatterbox if it's not authentic, because you're not going to remember what you're talking about. You're not going to retain anything, and you're going to lose a lot of the strengths you have by being an introvert. So then I decided to go to a quick Google search. This is not in the book, but quick Google search. What's an introvert versus extrovert? And this is kind of a generic table that they produce, but truthfully, I am kind of inside that square, or that shape, I guess. I don't even know what kind of shape that is. But I like being alone. I do make quick decisions. I can be outgoing and enthusiastic, but I kind of prefer to work independently. No offense, Brittany, who's on here, who's on my team. No offense, anybody on my team. But I just kind of like being by myself. So I'm defined, I guess, as an ambivert, I guess is the real truth. And that's kind of why we really like the Hogan tool, for those of you who have had the pleasure of doing a Hogan, because we are typically way more complex human beings than just saying introvert or extrovert. There's so much more about it. So this is kind of, if you ever think of a classic introvert or extrovert, they're going to be on the right or the left side of this of this chart. But a lot of us are going to find ourselves in the middle, and that's kind of where we'll kind of start off from. So again, going back to the beginning here, we might think that most introverts are, well, here's some successful introverts that frankly we may never even thought of. And I don't even know who this person is, honestly, but just a lot of people are into movies. If you know who Shonda Lynn Rhimes is, raise your hand. Okay, Annie does. A few people do, I'm sure. She's ultimately a really successful entertainer in the world. She's worth about $250 million. She started her own production company. She's a screenwriter. She is an introvert. Other introverts you may have never thought of or known of: Mark Zuckerberg, worth about 107 billion. He's an introvert. J.K. Rowling's worth over $1 billion. She's an introvert. Oops. Jessica Alba, $340 million. She's an introvert. Steven Spielberg, worth about 4.8. Michael Jordan, worth over 2 billion. And Elon Musk, worth, I don't know, probably anywhere from 260 to 280, depending on the stock prices. The point is that you don't have to be an extrovert to be successful. We're surrounded by them all the time. And I would argue that a lot of us probably wouldn't even necessarily think that these people are introverted, and they're probably more ambiverted, but they definitely lean more towards the introverted tendencies. So don't lie to yourself and just say, well, this is kind of where I'm going to be. Don't have the victim mentality. This is kind of where I'm going to be because I don't like to talk to people, because these people don't like to talk to people, and they did pretty good, and we all can too. So chapter 1, it's all about value. And really, they give you some tangible steps here, and this is going to be recorded, so you don't have to take copious notes that you may or may not refer to later, Grace. You can just feel free to go to the recording. And I'm the same way. I take notes on everything, and I never look at them, but they're there, and they're part of my processing mechanism, so it makes me feel good. So first down, write. Take a note. Write on what makes you unique. When you get done, if you think, you know what am I good at? This is like your after action from this training. This week, at some point, write down all the things that are really unique qualities about you that you're good at. And then write down how that skill can benefit others, whether professionally or personally. And then keep that that list close to you, and review it frequently to make sure you're standing close to your values, to make what makes you unique. Because here's the thing. Your introvertedness is a skill or it's a weakness. If you choose to ignore the things that make you unique and better than the extroverted people, guess what? You're a weakness. You're not embracing your strengths. You're focusing on your weaknesses, and you're just moving through life without focus or purpose. So focus on the things that make you unique, and then try to figure out how to incorporate those into your daily life. Next, establish a presence. Now, this doesn't mean be somebody you're not, but think about the next meeting you have, the next time that you're with a group of people. And I hit this on Driving Your Career once. Don't just be a participant in a meeting. Don't just watch the meeting happen. Come with a solution. Understand what the meeting is before the meeting happens, and have ideas on how to make it better. If you are in the meeting, you have a reason to be there. Don't just be a wallflower. but have a presence, establish a presence, fix problems, and have the courage to speak up. And then the last thing was challenge ideas. Now, only if you have a solution. Don't be in a meeting and say, I don't think that's going to work. And then wait for somebody else to talk. Because what happens is Tony Martin, who came with the idea, who's been working on the idea for a few days, few hours, a few seconds, whatever. I came with the idea. And for you to crap all over my idea and say, I don't think it's going to work without saying anything else, that just pisses me off. People will come with a solution. If you don't think it's going to work, I'm not sure that's going to work, but I don't have a better solution, so let's press. Be an advocate unless you have a better idea. And then present your solution, and that's part about having a presence. Now, each chapter also has a little section of what introverts wish extroverts knew about them. So if you're introverted, you're probably more likely to speak up if you feel the team is a judgment-free zone. And frankly, it's probably really hard for you to add value if everybody else is talking. Whatever, like I don't just need to be another voice in the crowd. I'll just be quiet. And you probably like to process, but you do have good ideas. So it's important for your leaders to know that. It's also, this is kind of like your opportunity to go, yep, that's me. Yep, that's me. Yep, that's me. I need to make sure other people know about this on my team or my leaders know about this. If these are true statements for you and no leaders and nobody knows about it, make sure they know about it because these aren't commonly understood. And you might have a great idea, but you just need a couple hours to marinate on the information. And then you'd really love it if someone checked in with you. Guess what? We're not always going to check in with you. You were in the meeting. You had an opportunity to speak up. You chose not to, and you went back. But if you did come up with a better solution, now have the courage to go talk to your leader, talk to your team, and say, hey, I've been thinking about it. But that's the thing about introverts is that they're really good at processing information, but they got to have the courage to bring it up. All right, next is courage. And we got some Marines storming the beach here, maybe Navy SEALs, can't quite tell. We wear the same uniform, but anytime I get a chance to plug the military, I will. So first thing about having the courage, it's about asking the right questions, okay? Information is critical. Whenever I gave advice, and some of you know my background, but I would give advice to senior executives as part of my job for a pretty substantial number of years. Whenever anybody would ask me a question and say, hey, what do you think I should do? I would spend no less than 5 minutes asking questions before I solicited any advice. Here's the thing. Every single one of us gives advice all the time. We all have opinions and we think we're awesome. Watching football this weekend. Why the hell did the coach do that? Who's calling that play? What the F is going on out there? Good Lord, Bill Belichick, you suck. Now, he doesn't. He's pretty awesome. But anyway, the age-old debate, is it Brady or is it Belichick? As a Patriots fan, I digress and have my own opinions. All that to say, we all have opinions. But all of our opinions and all of our advice is based on a whole lot of assumptions. We are assuming so much, and we can't give real advice unless we're basing it on facts. And you can't give factual, good advice unless you get the questions answered. So if you don't ask the right questions, your advice may be good, it may be bad, but it's as likely to be good as hitting the bullseye on a dartboard when you're throwing a dart. You need to understand the full context. So if someone's asking me, should I take the salary of $500,000 a year? Well, I don't know. There's a bunch of questions. Do you need the salary? Is your company, what's your quality of life right now? And I know 500,000 is a lot, but if you got $700,000 of debt that you're trying to manage out of, no, you shouldn't take it. How much do you have in a savings account? What is, do you really like the job? Are you going to be there for a long time? What's the progression in the job? There's so many questions that before I can answer a simple, should I, yes or no, you need to get a lot of context every single day. If there's one thing to take away from this today, from the next 26 minutes, is get good at asking questions. And before you give any advice, get good at understanding what you're really giving advice on. Otherwise, you're giving advice on a whole bunch of stuff that may or may not be true in your brain because you're making a lot of assumptions. So when you're giving advice and have the courage, make sure you understand the pros and cons, the whole pros and cons list. That works out pretty nicely, but just make sure you understand what the good is, what the bad is, and that's all about asking the questions. And then leaders, they have to make decisions. Even if it's the wrong decision. It's better that we're all moving forward together than us not moving at all, because at least by making the wrong decision, we'll quickly realize, hey, this wasn't the right one. Let's change paths. Or both, and most likely, guys, most likely when you're making tough decisions, there's no easy answer. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a tough decision. It's kind of good over here and it's kind of good over here, and we're just not sure which way is the best way to go, and we're gonna freaking figure it out together, and we might fail. And that's okay, but we got to fail quickly and we got to realize which is the right path, and we have to be able to correct. So you got to make a decision so you know which way you're supposed to be going. Now, what the introverts wish the extroverts knew is introverts are natural observers, they're great listeners, and they often, because of that, have a better pulse, a better understanding of what most people in the group want, because they're listening about what the group is bitching about, complaining about, being upset about. Because they're in the group about that, they are now able to be the voice of the group if they're willing to speak up. So if you're a leader, it's really important that you enlist your introverts in advice. Hey, what should I do about this? What do you think I should do? Because the introverts probably have a better feeling for what people are wanting as the group. Trust. Chapter 3, all about trust. Every single class that you ever do in leadership, trust should be part of it, frankly. And frankly, you don't have to be the person to solve all the team's biggest problems, but you have to be of service to the solution, and you need to be sure that you are able to help people figure out the path, or at least ask questions. So you don't need to solve the team's biggest problems, but if you can, you are going to establish trust very, very quickly. If the team has a problem and you can solve it, and it is correct, you're going to start establishing trust. Now, this next part's kind of tough. Mirroring leaders' personality. As you think back, another writing exercise. Write down the 2, 3, maybe 5 leaders you admire most. And because you're all fairly young in your career, you might not have had that many great leaders, but hopefully you've had at least 1 or 2. Write down their names and then write down their personality traits that you admire. And then see how you compare to them. And I'm not saying you then pretend to be them. I'm just saying naturally, in your natural state, that guy gave a lot of grace. Do I give a lot of grace? That person was an extroverted speaker. Well, that's not me, but they were really authentic. I can be authentic. Write down the qualities that they do that you emulate, and then see how successful you are mirroring those qualities, and if they come natural. And then here's the real question that you ask yourself too. Okay, so I see the gap between me and the person that I kind of admire. Okay, it's not that bad. The real question to ask is, if everybody on the team acted the way I act, would we be successful? And that's a really hard question to answer if the answer is no. If everybody on the team doesn't speak up and have an opinion, if that's you, if everybody on the team is waiting for someone else to lead a project, if everyone on the team never asks any questions, are we going to be successful? And I'm not saying you do any of those things, but just ask yourself that question and make sure at the end of the day, you are part of the solution to solving your team's biggest problems. And that will help establish trust. Now, what the introverts wish the extroverts knew is that, frankly, introverts are loyal, but they have a smaller circle of people that they trust. And they'll trust, if they can't trust you, they won't get to know you. So it's important that we all, introverted or extroverted or ambiverted, we trust that we set a culture of trust that people can then believe in us and want to open up to us. Chapter 4, accountability. Okay. First of all, it's important when I say retrain your mind, listen in your day-to-day. Are you an excuse giver or are you a problem solver? Do you take accountability or do you deflect? Next year, we're going to go back to the curriculum we did back in 2021. So some of you sadly will not be joining us because you've already been in this program for 3 years, and you're more than welcome to stick around, but don't want you to have to hear things you've already heard before. But one of those things that we talked about, I think 3 years ago, and we'll talk about next year, is that we see the world in 3 different lights. Some of us, if we have an external locus of control, locus, L-O-C-U-S, if we have an external locus of control, we see the world happening to us. It's externally happening to us. And I'm either a victim, I'm either helpless, or they are a villain. And I just have to react. Listen in your daily life to the people you spend time with and listen for the clues. Are they a victim or are they believing in themselves that, I made a bad decision. Yeah. I lost $1,000 on the stock, but truthfully, I made an impulsive buy. Or no, that person gave me the bad advice. It's their fault. Listen to those people around you. And I'm not saying like abandon people who are your friends and family, but just start retraining your mind to be thinking, am I adopting that mentality? Or am I adopting hey, it's my fault. I did something to cause this outcome and I'm culpable in the results. So make a list of things that you want to get done is the next thing. Take action. Make a list, another list here of all the things you want to get done today or you want to get done this week or this month. And do one thing at a minimum in order to get towards that end result. Often we have all these goals that we just never do. And some goals are good. Some goals are stretch goals. Some goals, we don't even have a desire to do it. We just said, oh yeah, someday I want to lose 20 pounds. Well, what are you doing to try to get that done? If you're not taking any action to get it done, it's not going to happen. So it's great to put it out there when you order the Diet Coke and the low-calorie ice cubes. But at the end of the day, it's not really going to solve the problem. So when you have goals, write down what they are and do one thing to make it happen. And then don't give up. It's so easy to get discouraged. Over here, this whole chart here, SL2, situational leadership. Some of you have been through it. Some of you will go through it. Some of you heard about it last year, maybe a year or 2 years ago at this point. We gave an overview of it. But when you are progressing through skills, you automatically typically start off as super excited, but you don't know what you're doing. And then very quickly, the task or goal becomes, oh my gosh, this is harder than I thought it was. And my daughter and I just had a conversation 2 nights ago. She started volleyball. By the way, my daughter, freaking soccer, all-star, unbelievable, great soccer team. We won the championship. We got the ring. If you want to come touch it, the ring is in here. But my daughter started volleyball on Sunday, and she's not liking it. It was 2 hours long, maybe a little long for her. She's 7 years old and all these things. I said, honey, you're at D2. I go, right now, you're learning something, and you realize it's not going to be fun the whole time. And guess what? When you first started soccer, you were in the same thing. So realize that for yourselves. Don't give up. When you get to the point of an idea or a project that starts to suck, you're supposed to. That means it's challenging. And that means you're going to grow. And if you give up, you never see any of the benefit of the bad place. So do that. All right. And then which extroverts knew is that we like details and we make really good accountability partners. So partner up with introverts because they'll be really observant to be able to give you good insight. The next piece is humility. Sadly, this is one that I struggle with. I like to be on. I like for people to see my boldness. And from time to time, it's too much. So it's important that I celebrate other people. I celebrate my team. I take the spotlight off of me and allow others to have it. So celebrating their wins, taking them out to lunch. So celebrate the small wins of your team or the big wins, but celebrate them. Don't make it about you. Tony Martin, don't make it about you. I'm telling myself this constantly. And it's not because I'm trying to steal the spotlight. It's more so because I'm just trying to show them I can relate to them. But I become a jerk about it, or I could become a jerk about it. So I try not to. Anyway, but yeah, celebrate the wins of others, give the team the credit. And then when things go wrong, and inevitably they will, don't say, Sarah messed up. Say, you know what? We dropped the ball. We could have done it differently when you're talking to other people. Don't call out anyone on your team. Allow the responsibility to fall on you, even if it was 1% your fault, 99% someone else's fault. And again, you're going to have to judge this, because if you have been doing these steps and you have trust established with these people, then that's totally fine. But if nobody trusts you because you've been screwing up a lot, then maybe you need to be honest if someone else caused the. This is an art and a science. Everything I do, there's always a way that you can argue the counterpoint. I can totally appreciate that. That's why I don't really try to use words like never and always, because there's potentially a way around this. But shield your team as a practice from the criticism. And then what we wish the extroverts knew is that introverts are very empathetic, and they usually have higher EQ. Next year, we'll go back into our EQ topics, our emotional intelligence, emotional quotient. We'll talk about those, but they usually have higher EQ. Now, authenticity. Sorry, let me take a sip here. Okay. Being authentic. Never compare yourself to somebody else. Now you're going to say, Tony, just 2 chapters ago, you told me to compare myself to a leader. Yes, compare yourself to leaders that you admire, but don't try to be them. Just try to see where the gaps are, what comes natural to you, and then lean into those strengths. Okay. But certainly don't compare ourselves to people who are fake, or, well, at least I'm not like her. At least I'm not like him. Don't do that. Don't make social media posts that show how awesome your life is if your life isn't awesome. Or before you post a social media post, say to yourself, why am I posting this? Am I truly posting this because I want my circle of friends to see it because they care? Or am I trying to post it because I want people to know how great I am at something? That's going to come in a second too with service. But love yourself, be kind to yourself, kind of what Grace said earlier, have love for yourself. Give yourself grace and time to mature in different roles as you're moving around. And then don't ever compromise your integrity. My wife actually got aggravated me during our first soccer game this year because I called a foul on my girls. She's like, why'd you do that? And we still won the game. And maybe if we weren't winning, I don't know. I'd like to say I would have done it, but let's be honest here. Who knows? I'm too competitive. But I did it, and then I stopped doing it, honestly, because the other coaches weren't doing it, and it was screwing over the girls I care about. I don't really care about the other team's girls. So anyway, I stopped doing it. But the point was, I was like, honey, this is more important than just soccer. I want them to realize that, life lessons here. So anyway, to the best of your ability, never compromise your integrity unless there's a handball and you see it and you don't want to say anything. I totally understand. Okay, so what introverts wish extroverts knew. Introverts wish they were asked the question directly versus being in a group setting. So if you have introverts on your team, go to them afterwards. What do you think about this? And then if they do speak up in a team, acknowledge what they say and then advocate for them. You know what? I really like what Connor said. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And if you don't totally agree, then don't lie. But I really like what Connor's going at here. However, I think we could shift it a little bit. But Connor, thanks for getting us down this path. Acknowledge what they said, because sometimes for them to speak up is super difficult. And I liked this quote from the book. So we find comfort in the fact that my focus is no longer on worrying about what other people might think about me. And instead, I choose to be me and just focus on growing and improving every day. Authenticity. Don't worry about what other people think. And my gosh, this is a lesson for my 10-year-old son and my 7-year-old daughter. And it sucks at that age, right? Like, you guys are all young, so you probably still remember being 10 and 7, let alone having children that age. But you just, your heart just bleeds for them because they're so caught up in what other people think of them. And it's so debilitating. So don't continue to carry on those stereotypes into 2024 and beyond. Move on from them. Worry about you. All right, collaboration. We got 11 minutes left. I think we're going to hit it just fine. So collaboration is our next chapter. And a lot of us are fearful. Who's fearful here? Raise your hand of saying, I don't know. Like, if a leader comes to you and says, hey, what's the problem with this CP line? Or what's going on over here? How many of you feel uncomfortable saying, I don't know? Apparently nobody. Okay, a few. Thank you. But Grace is comfortable. Grace Dansby, she's comfortable saying, I don't know. Proud of you, Grace. Proud of you all for being honest. And then the ones who couldn't raise your hand, maybe you don't know. But truthfully, it's okay to say, I don't know. You are not expected to know every single answer. When you were going to school and you struggled in a subject, what did you do? You went to a tutor. You didn't just shut up and figure it out. Maybe you did, and it took you longer, but maybe you went to a tutor. Maybe in the company, again, what Grace said, maybe you need to get a mentor. Maybe you should have a mentor. Maybe it's a waste of 6 months of your time. Maybe it's not. If you don't have a mentor, truthfully, there's really no reason not to. Okay, just gonna plug that in there. If you're having struggles with a marriage, you might see a marriage counselor. Bottom line, we kind of naturally go to seek people who know stuff, but when we're doing our job, we expect, oh, no. If I say I don't know, then they're going to lose confidence and trust in me. No, it's actually the opposite. When you say you don't know something, people gain confidence and trust in you because they know you're not BSing them. They know you're not lying to them. Because clearly, if you did know, you'd say something. So don't do what I do sometimes, which is talk around an answer and like never get to the point. If you don't know something, say it and then figure it out and then come back. If you're trying to figure something out and you don't know, go talk to people who do know and they'll help you get there faster. Know who's on your team. This is an interesting one, and delegation. We'll put those together. The idea that Terrance was coming across was, if you're the smartest person on your team, it is time to join a new team. Let me say that one more time. If you are the smartest person on your team, change teams because you are done growing. You're now, your ego is fed, you feel good, you're learning, you're teaching stuff, but you're no longer developing. And it doesn't mean leave that team, but it means maybe join another team as well, where you can continue to grow and stretch and learn stuff. Because if you're the leader, you're not going to leave your team, but you certainly need to be part of a team that's pulling you and stretching you. You always need to have some sort of mentor-mentee relationship in your life. And then make sure when you're delegating things, you're doing it smartly and you're not afraid to delegate stuff. You should develop your people. As an introvert or an extrovert, one of our biggest flaws is we think we like it. As human beings, we like it. If I leave this job, they're going to regret it. They're going to realize just how awesome I was. That is the worst attitude to have. You are a terrible leader, or potentially a terrible leader, if that's your feeling, because that means you've equipped nobody around you to do what you're supposed to be doing and to help you leave that job successfully. Remember, if you want to move up in the company, who are you training to take your job? If you're training no one to take your job, you're probably going to be stuck there for a lot longer than you want to be, unless you're fuel initially, because you get to jump for years. But then eventually you're going to land. And if you don't like it, you're stuck unless you're training somebody else. So make sure you're delegating properly. Make sure you're training people to be able to take your job. And then what extroverts wish the introvert, or what introverts wish the extroverts knew, that they enjoy big brainstorming session some of the time. Okay, if I put everyone in a room here and we're talking about AU next year, and I would love it. By the way, homework, anyone, how do we increase engagement in our learning management system? Give me some ideas. I would love that. This is a tackling problem that me and Brittany and Jen Booble, we are trying to tackle. We spend $177,000 a year on something, and I don't know how to get more than 20 people of 3,000 to interact with the LMS outside of compliance training and S training. I don't know. True statement. So there's an I know statement. I don't know statement. And if you have some great ideas, please Teams me. Let's chat, because I want to figure out how to increase engagement in this expensive tool that we use. Okay. Confidence. I got to go faster now. I apologize. So confidence. When I was dating my wife, she used to say, I can't all the time. And it would upset me. We'd be in the gym. I can't lift it. She could. She was choosing not to because she didn't want to push through the pain. But don't use I can't statements to the best of your ability. And if you do get nervous about public speaking, about things, there's tips. And this is all in chapter 8, page 167, if you happen to get the book digitally or whatever. So if you want tips on how to overcome nervousness, they're all there. Not all. There's a whole bunch there that are actually pretty good. about public speaking and getting over the nervousness. I just don't have time to get into it. But remember, when you are public speaking, from last week or last quarter, we learned only 7% of what you say is being focused on. So right now, I know that only 7% of the words I'm talking about are really being heard, but my tone matters, my voice matters, my body language. That's why I always stand. I always stand, and I hate that word, right? But I always stand, if possible, when I'm giving trainings. My voice is different than sitting in my chair. It just is. And it keeps people more engaged. And truthfully, I say the wrong thing quite often, somewhat to keep people locked in, because they're like, I don't know what the hell he's going to say next. And they kind of don't want to miss it. And then if everyone's kind of laughing, like, what did I just miss? So bottom line up, people don't always listen to what you're saying. They listen to how you say it, and make sure that you don't just talk like this the whole time, because you could be the most brilliant person in the world. But if this is the way you present, no one's ever going to know it. They're never going to hear it. And you got to figure it out. Again, don't be an introvert who's trying to be an extrovert and have all this pizzazz. I'll say what I have is pizzazz. Don't have all this pizzazz if it's not natural. But what I am saying is make sure you find what's authentically you and proceed with it. Or maybe you're just not the best person to public speak. Or maybe you need to limit the amount of time you're speaking, because you can talk like this for a minute and that's okay. But after about a minute, people just start doing something else. All right, practice when you're doing speaking engagements. Guys, if you had walked by my office at 9:30 yesterday, you would have seen me doing exactly what I'm doing right now to nothing. I was staring at the little light, talking to myself, because I think I'm a pretty good presenter, but I still have to do this to be this good. Again, I don't mean that arrogantly, but I mean to give a certain qualities people want to pay attention to. I have to practice this stuff. Okay, so if you're not very good, you can't just wing it. And then, think about what mantra you live by. Have positive thoughts or negative thoughts. Some phrases like "I can do all things in Christ," or it's right in the book. I'm the best speaker in the room. Tell yourself something that is going to change your narrative, because if your narrative is, "Oh, I can't do it," guess what? You're not going to be very good, because you're just overcome with negative thoughts. Introverts wish that the extroverts knew that public speaking for them is hard, that they need the full support and encouragement of the team, and they also need feedback and will not take it personal. Now, that's what the book said. We all can take things personal sometimes. So you need to adopt the mentality of not taking things personal if people are giving you feedback, especially if it's uncomfortable, because they have nothing to gain by giving you the feedback most of the time. Service. Ultimately, if you do things for other people, your circle of influence will grow. I'm looking for the book. It's not over here. We went over it a few months ago, was talking about effective people. And ultimately, they grow their circle of influence. Bottom line, if you're serving others, if you're helping others, don't post about it on social media, because very quickly, the post becomes what you did and why you did it. It's not about helping people. It's about everybody knowing that I helped somebody. And truthfully, your service doesn't come across very intentional. What introverts wish extroverts knew is that they're naturally empathetic. They naturally want to serve. They make great servant leaders, and they put their needs ahead of others. Okay, chapter 10, effort. Bonus question. Does anybody know why there's a red cord around these Navy SEAL trainees, BUDS trainings? Why there's red cords here? Unmute. I might send you a leadership book. Take a guess. Courage. It was chapter
Does it hold their hat?
chapter 2. What?
Hold their hat?
Christian, you are right. That's exactly why. Because when they're running up and down, did you know that, or were you guessing that?
It looked like maybe it was going up to their hat. That was an educated guess, I guess.
It was a great guess. Yep. And we would call it a cover in the Marine Corps or Navy, but you wouldn't know that. But that is perfect. Christian, I'm going to figure out some way to reward you. So congratulations as being a first contestant and getting something. So I'll figure it out afterwards, but I wrote your name down. Thanks, man. All right. Bottom line here is effort, guys. I've talked about this. This is actually what launched my consultancy. I did a podcast. I did a talk about effort, and the bottom line was when is the minimal amount of effort produce the outcome you wanted? And you have to master your craft. And if you have to go right now, I totally understand. Drop off. I'm going to be 2 more minutes. And if you don't, please stay, but I will keep it recorded. When, effort matters, but you can't have a lot of effort if you don't know any of the basic foundational skills. I can be in a batting cage trying to hit a baseball every day from now to the end of time. But if I don't actually sit down with a coach and learn, oh, you want to pivot here or you want to swing here, I'm not going to be as effective. So really work on your foundational things. When I first moved to Houston, I wanted to learn how to golf. I actually worked at a par 3 driving range, a par 3 9-hole golf course attached with a driving range, and it was lit. It was pretty cool. Just so I could learn how to golf. I became friends with the pro, and every Friday I was the clubhouse guy, and then I could golf for free whenever I wanted to. And I started golfing with the pro, and he started teaching me how to swing. I was still not very good, but I at least know what I'm supposed to do. But how many of us know or are that person who started golfing with no lessons, and ultimately we're just bad all the time, and once in a while we get lucky, but we're not really sure what we're supposed to do, and we developed all these bad habits. That's the point. Master your craft, but first understand what foundational skills you need, the basics you need, learn those, write those down, and then write down the goal, commit to actually doing it, and write down with a SMART goal. Again, remember, SMART is specific, it's motivating. Do I really want to do it? Is it obtainable? Is it relevant? And how am I going to track this thing? But the point is that make sure the goal is something you can attain. So if you're trying to write a book, the goal shouldn't be I'm going to write a book. The goal should be I'm going to write 1 page each day. Something I can attain. Because writing a book is really scary, but writing a page is easy. I'm not writing a book, but that's an example. And then what do we wish the extroverts knew about us is that the more detailed and calculated, that often introverts are more detailed and calculated than extroverts. And extroverts more jump to the action. I put highly inquisitive. Highly inquisitive people, according to the Hogan, are usually more, let me think about it, let me plan it out. Low inquisitive people, let me jump to action. So very similar. Introverted tendencies are usually higher on the inquisitive scale. And then lastly, we have our Robert Frost road less traveled. Most of the time, extroverts seek leadership roles, but introverts would benefit the organization greatly if they had sought the leadership roles. So don't just allow somebody else to take your spot as a leader if you think it's something you want. All right. Transition. Thank you for your time. Let me make an announcement and then I'll have any time for questions. Usually we don't get any questions. I love questions, but if we don't get any, not a big deal. Thank you, first of all, Scott McCormick, Grace Dansby, and Annie McCormick. No relation to Scott, just in case anyone's wondering. They've been on something we call a steering committee, or I call a steering committee, and once every 3 weeks, we meet and we chat for maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, but we talk about what we're doing next quarter and we kind of do things. So Scott this year is rolling off and Kelly Mallory is going to be taking his spot. So Kelly, I don't know if you're still on, but thank you so much for volunteering to step up and take Scott's part on our team. So that's that, but thank you, Scott, so much for your time and effort this year. I alluded to this a little bit ago. If this is like your 3rd year in the Emerging Leaders Network, so you've been in it since 2021, you will get an email from me that says, hey, thanks so much, but we're now disenrolling you from the program. You can reply and go, I still want to stay. That's fine. I'll keep you. But what I don't want is a list of 90 people and nobody shows up. I'd rather have a list of 60 people and we get 30 like we did today. I don't want 90 and get 30. So it kind of doesn't work well when the speaker comes in and they're like, oh, I thought the group was 90 people large. So that being said, thank you so much. Love to hear from you as to like what topics you actually remembered over the last 3 years and things like that. We're going to be enrolling new people. So this is the call to action. If somebody is at your level, young professional, you feel like, gosh, like there's someone I want to hang out with because they're kind of like an emerging leader and I feel like they are, but they're not in these meetings. Talk to them, talk to their leader, get them on the list, because in a couple of weeks, I'm actually pulling from Workday that list. And if you don't know how to do it, let me know afterwards. I'll show you how to do it, or I'll show you how to show their leader how to do it. But the bottom line is that I'm hopefully we're losing about 20 people. Hopefully we're gaining about 20 people. And that's kind of how we rotate this thing through. So thank you so much for your participation over the past 3 years. Next year, we're going to be talking about EQ, emotional intelligence, which we talked about in 2021, and a few other topics. So I'm so sorry I went super long, but it's Grace's fault. See, external locus of control right there. It's her fault, not mine. Anyway, any questions? Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. Don't yawn, Kendra. Don't yawn. This is no. Anyway, but no, I'd be yawning too. I talk a lot. Any questions? Any concerns? And I'll turn off the recording now. So boom. You don't have to worry about it if I can't turn it off. Stop recording. Okay. Any questions? Any thoughts?